May I sit in front of you?
Well, all right.
All right, welcome everybody to another rousing Chiltonville Sunday at the Barn meeting. This is a great turnout. Thanks as always to our hosts, the Withington clan, the relatives, not me, I don't own this. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the select board here. What we really want to do is make this more of a conversation. And if they have to arm wrestle, they're close enough so that they can get that done. So I'm going to do a little intro, and Patty's going to take it over. So let's see if I can do that. So one of the things that was a request, I know for time purposes, we're just talking about, we're just doing the 5 select board, but we do have a couple of other officials. Are there any town meeting members here? So if you want to just stand up and say your name quickly. Are you up for re-election?
Yeah.
Ginny, you're up.
Hi, most of you already know me, Ginny Davis, Precinct 4.
Great.
Rich Cirque, I'm not up for re-election this year.
Precinct 2.
Michael Withington, Precinct 15. If you're not going to vote for Rich Cirque, vote for me. Got my vote.
Perfect. All right. And then also we have a couple of other candidates. Where's Art? Oh, there's Art. Art and Frank. So they're not going to take questions, and they're going to keep it to 2 minutes just to stand up and intro themselves. They'll be around afterwards so we can have some discussion. Art, do you want to start off?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you. Thanks. Hi. Afternoon. And thank you for the 2 minutes. I'm pleased to be back at the barn again. Hi. I'm Art DeSoldiers.
45 seconds.
And I'm running for Commissioner of the Plymouth Redevelopment Authority. Over the past several years, I've heard from thousands of voters, young families, seniors, and our professional workforce. All of them have told me they cannot find a place in Plymouth that they can call home. I believe this should change. Most voters ask me, what does the Plymouth Redevelopment Authority actually do? It is a public body with broad authority to revitalize underutilized or blighted areas for the benefit of the whole community. This includes participating in the development of affordable housing. For example, in 2001, the PRA was the lead agency to remediate brownfields of the Revere Copper Company on Water Street. After cleanup, it eventually became a location for an apartment complex that housed affordable housing. Today, the PRA lacks the funding and technical competency to undertake projects like this. I'm running on a vision. My vision is for the PRA to use its broad authority and to be an active stakeholder in tackling the issues of deed-restricted affordable housing and housing that is affordable for every generation. As a member of the Town Master Plan Committee and an elected town meeting member, I am well qualified for this position. Plus, my years in the Peace Corps and as a senior exec at Citibank taught me the leadership and organizational and planning skills to make progress for Plymouth. I believe that conservation and having housing for our workforce are compatible goals. I acknowledge this is a difficult public policy issue. As soon as one person says we need to build more affordable housing, another person says no more development. This challenge will take collaborative planning and the acceptance of new ideas. If elected, I will reach out to you to get other ideas. Some of my ideas including have collaborative planning with stakeholders, building on underutilized land, public-private partnerships, and zoning for cottage housing and starter homes. I know if that we work together, we can have multi-generational homes here in Plymouth and a vibrant community. I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
You want to say
Yeah, I didn't realize I was gonna have 2 minutes to give a speech. That means I'm gonna go much longer than that. No, actually, I
That's
would
a
say
shocker.
we should wait like 30 seconds because Mr. Jacinto, my competition,
Yeah.
is probably lost trying to find this place. Anybody who's ever come here for the first time wanders around for a while. So let's listen. So if he doesn't show up, give him the benefit of the doubt. Good young guy from Cedarville. So I'm Frank Mann. I'm the old guy who now lives downtown, but really my feet are more firmly planted in the soil of this community, in the woods and the wildlands and the ponds and all, because that's become what my strength and passion is. I along with Charles Heller, are the co-leaders of the Southeastern Massachusetts Pine Barrens Alliance. We've been around for about 15 years, and we're focused on this amazing community environmentally that we work in and live in and try to protect. And the reason I'm running for the planning board in large part is because I believe, as Art said, that those two things, development and our beautiful open space, are not incompatible. That in fact, they feed each other, especially more so than most people understand. Our environment is really our key to our economic future, I believe, because open space is the best, most cost-effective way to have land in a community. And I still think we need to preserve more, and we definitely need to knit together with Holtec and other properties all the wonderful little gems we have that are isolated from one another, that we could turn ourselves into the environmental ecotourism community that we really should be. So, is that 2 minutes? Anyway, I could go on about this, but I'm passionate about this community. I want to be involved on a serious level, and the planning board is a very serious level. There's only 2 executive boards in town, the select board and the planning board, and I want to be on the planning board. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to tee it up and then I'm going to turn it over to Patty. Just the format here, what we wanted to do is make this very much more of a conversation similar to what we did when the Plymouth Independent was here. I thought that was fun. We also didn't want to have people just get up and give stump speeches, so we structured 3 questions. We've told everybody what the questions are, and we're going to give them 3 minutes to reply. We've got 5 people, so that'll take a while. 3 questions, you do the math. As I say, the format is going to be 3 questions, all around stuff that we've spoken on in the past. So smart growth, the wastewater treatment plant, and open space. And so once we're done with that, we'll open up for questions. Both formal kind of structured, and then we can break it down so you can have one-on-one discussions with folks. There has been a request from the audience if you all can kind of, when you do first speak, introduce what party you're with. I don't care what party you are, but folks in the audience. And so with that, we will turn it over.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Obviously, we've got some candidates here for the select board. There are 2 incumbents and 3 interested parties. So if you'd like to just introduce yourselves, just name only, and then I'm going to follow up with the questions.
My name is Bill Koehan. John Mahoney.
Deb Iaquinto.
Charlie Bletzer.
Scott Vecchi.
Great, thank you. We had posed, or Mark had posed these questions, and I'll just read them so everybody understands what they're answering, so they don't need to redo the question. One question, smart growth. It's been a common theme that Plymouth needs to attract commercial growth to diversify its tax base. What is the ratio of residential to commercial base you support, and can you offer examples of towns, cities in Massachusetts that have achieved this? The second one deals with wastewater treatment. The town is currently considering rerouting 1.75 MGDs of effluent from the harbor outfall pipe to Camelot Park. Given the high cost associated with proper tertiary treatment of the effluent, please describe your position on this effort. The third question, open space. The town is currently master planning the Holtec property. Please provide your opinion on what portion of the property should remain as open space and how that acquisition could be funded. If you envision development on the property, how much and where would that go? So we will start, and I'm just going to randomly pick a name. And should we have them just answer the one question?
Yeah.
Yeah, one
Yeah,
question.
one
Okay, we'll start with smart growth. John Mahoney, would you like to speak on smart
Absolutely.
growth? And he came with some props.
All right.
So, I'm a Democrat. I know you're not going to believe this. Financially conservative Democrat, because it is hypocritical of government to charge you a tax for roads that never goes to roads. And that's Proposition 2.5. And it's an unmitigated disaster. Okay. So we're talking about 4 variables here. And the question was, what's the expectation or something to that effect? The worst thing that ever happened to this community was the revenue stream from that power plant. 60s, you're at 20%. Personal property, industrial, commercial. Magically, you woke up on January 1st of 72 and 49.86 was the power plant. Worst thing that ever happened to you. From this point to this point, you added 18,000 people. From that point to that point, you added 47,000. Your policy is not to have a diversified tax base. Because you artificially lowered taxes combined with the Garrity decision in 74 and the 100 square miles of pristine land prepped for residential development, you promoted out of control residential growth. And then in 97, you were offered 3,000 acres of land for free and you said, we don't want it, develop it residentially. You can't have it both ways. You're currently at 14% industrial, commercial, personal property. So all this has flattened that curve, which is 13 billion plus or minus residential. You are not reversing that, okay? You're gonna add another 3 to 5 billion minimum coming out at build out in 2040 with no land left except for scraps, okay? You're gonna be in the 96 to 99% residential tax base, okay? Mr. Desloges is talking about affordable housing. There's three stools of the affordable housing stool. There's 3 legs. Nobody talks about water. Nobody talks about tax policy. I'm talking about people who have to pay property taxes to live in their homes, okay? This is unaffordable housing, this policy. Because if you want to put everything here, how does it get to the new school, whether it's modernized or built or new construction? You borrow against this fund and exponentially grow property taxes. If you don't put all of your eggs into this basket,
30 seconds, Joe.
you don't have to raise property taxes. So the key to the future is, and I've always advocated for this, you've got to stay away from the general fund. You've got to have a balanced approach. There is an inverse reaction. The more you put into this, the less affordable your community is. The less you put into the general fund, the more affordable your community is.
Great, perfect time. Thank you. Okay. Deb Iaquinto, would you like to speak on smart growth?
I sure would. I'm a little bit more optimistic than John, I think. We'll see. So right now, the ratio of residential to commercial in Plymouth is 86% residential, about roughly 14% for commercial. So if you look at the Department of Revenue lists all of the tax levies by category for all of the municipalities, 352 municipalities. Plymouth is at 164. So not the highest, not the lowest, it's kind of somewhere in the middle-ish. And whereas Kingston, Pembroke, Hanover, the Bridgewaters are all kind of roughly in the same category. And if you look at all of that data for the 352 municipalities, it kind of tells a story that where we're at right now is about what you would expect for a largely suburban community, semi-rural, rural, like Plymouth. But that does not mean that we have to settle for that. There are things that we can do. And our situation is exasperated by the increase in our property values. There was just a really cool study that the Globe did around the rise in median home prices across Massachusetts. Plymouth's have risen by 64.5% in 5 years. So 5 years ago, the median sale price on a house was $380,000. Today, it's $625,000. So that's a big jump in 5 years, and it's only the trajectory is just going to keep going up. So property values, our properties are assessed. It's like a year and a half look back. So the 2025 shocking tax bills that we got were based on 2023 rates. So just imagine the next time there's an assessment based on rates that continue to climb. So we need to do something, and we can do something. In addition to alleviating the tax burden on residents, it's also good fiscal policy to diversify the kinds of revenues that the town is bringing in. So we don't want all of our commercial tax revenues coming from commercial. We need to spread that, from retail, sorry. We do want to across different industries so we have a more stable base there. So in terms of what is a reasonable target, I'm thinking like we're at 86-14 now. I don't think 80-20 is out of the realm of possibility for us. It would take some time to get there, and it would take a really targeted business development effort and a really focused economic development plan.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay. But we have towns like Randolph, Rockland, Weymouth are at 80-20 now, and they've been able to sustain that over the past 10 years, if you look at the data that's available online. So they are able to do that, and when I look at an example of Weymouth as a town that does some really focused economic development, what they're doing at Union Point, for example, is a good example of how, Plymouth, there's no reason why Plymouth can't learn from their experience and bring that same economic development discipline to our town.
Thank you very much. Okay, Bill, your turn. Smart growth.
2 minutes, right?
Three.
3 minutes. One of the things on the
Tell
campaign.
Bill it's 2.
Are you a Democrat?
Yes, I am a Democrat. Bill Koehan, campaigning for office in this capacity for the first time. I never thought I'd do something like this, but when I think of smart growth and I think about the past and where we are today, that's our lives. I'm looking around the room, we all went through that. We were here in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. We saw the decisions were made. We weren't in a capacity to make a change. But I got involved in the early 2000s, and I got on the Zoning Board of Appeals, I got on the Open Space Committee, I got on the Community Preservation Committee, and began implementing what I thought would be smart growth. And that is trying to make changes on a level of how the institution works. And the institution of Plymouth works a certain way. And that's the thing that I bring to the table when it comes to smart growth, my institutional knowledge of how the zoning bylaws work, how the zoning board works, how the CPA, town meeting, warrant articles. We need to start to make some changes. Based on these events in the past, we don't want to relive those events in the past, but we can change our future by looking at our zoning when it comes to smart growth, looking at light industrial that supports small businesses that are locally owned. They hire people locally, give them benefits. That's the backbone of a local sustainable economy. So when you're talking about smart growth, you got to look at the future of how you're going to grow your community, where the revenue's going to come, and start using that power that you have to change your zoning bylaws to promote the type of industry that's going to be beneficial to the town. And you can't ignore conservation and preservation. It has to be on the front burner, and it has to be front and center. It has to be on equal footing to economic development in the town of Plymouth. And that's what I hope to do if I am able to serve on this board, is to make that a priority, along with trying to strengthen what type of commercial development that we bring online, because we need to stay away from the big box stores, the strip malls, the shopping centers. They're burdening the community. There was a lot of studies done in the late 90s and early 2000 that fueled my energy when it came to smart growth. There was the Berkeley study, there was a Princeton study, these cost of services studies that were done in the late 90s and 80s. And they were very educational in terms of how a town needs to generate the revenue and what type of zoning they should allow in. This is not about snob laws and not letting people in to build housing.
30 seconds.
We have to build the real affordable housing, and we can look at that through our zoning. So smart growth goes back to how we zone our town and how we implement those zoning bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, would you like to speak on smart growth?
Obviously, my name's Scott Vecchi, and just so you know, I'm currently a registered independent, or unenrolled is actually the appropriate term. I had been a registered Democrat for a long time, and I continued to try and change the party from within until finally I became frustrated. I went to the party leadership and I said, you're getting away from the middle class. You're getting away from the people in this room that are trying to get by, that are trying to survive, and we keep focusing on these extreme issues. And you have the two far extremes, whether it's either party fighting with each other, and while they're throwing rocks at each other, it's landing on us, all of us in the middle. I tried for a long time to change the direction of the party, but they didn't seem to be very in tune to that. So out of frustration, I became an unenrolled or an independent where I am now. I consider myself to be purple anyway. I'm fiscally conservative. I understand that our taxes are yours. They're not the town of Plymouth's, that they should be spent frugally and responsibly. And that's again, so I've always been kind of purple because fiscally I lean conservative, very in tune with that we're spending your money, not the town has no money. It has your money and it needs to be handled. So anyway, back to smart growth. Well, Bill talks about an institutional knowledge, which institutional and historic knowledge. I was born at the Jordan Hospital. I actually lived right on the edge of Chiltonville for about 20 years. I lived on Gunners Exchange for a long time. Sadly, I got divorced. I didn't really want to get divorced, but I did. So I had to sell my house on the edge of Chiltonville and move to North Plymouth. Hopefully, I'll come back to Chiltonville because I love Chiltonville. It's the best part of town. When it comes to smart growth, one of the biggest problems that we have, and again, that historical, I was born here. My dad was a cop. My mom was a nurse at the Jordan Hospital. My grandfather was a fire captain. The town has historically been hostile to commercial, to commercial stuff. So why are we at this ratio that we're at now that we're trying to change? Because Cisco was supposed to be here. What was that, like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that? Cisco was supposed to be in Plymouth. Town of Plymouth didn't want to work with them. They went to Plimpton. Plimpton reaped benefits of a new commercial facility in their town. The Independence Mall in the 80s was supposed to be in Plymouth. I remember because I used to work at the mall in the Cordage Park. I don't know if you guys remember that one. But when I was a kid, I worked there. And then the Independence Mall came and wiped that out. But historically, the town of Plymouth hasn't been as welcoming to commercial as we need to be. And that's why we wind up with Cisco and Plimpton, we wind up with the Independence Mall in Kingston, and all those other things. So if we want to talk about smart growth and we want to talk about bringing our commercial tax base
30 seconds.
Then we need to look for that and make that happen and not be hostile and keep our wall around us. That's the only way that you're going to really implement smart growth, by increasing your commercial, because we don't really have as much control over residential as we want to, right? Because if it's already zoned, if there's already a plan in, if somebody already owns it and they want to build residential on it, chances are they're going to, or they're going to shove a 40B, but we've seen, unfortunately, in a lot of neighborhoods. Down Shallow Pond, they got a 40B shoved in them, and all the roads are racetracks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie?
I am Charlie Bletzer. I'm a registered independent unenrolled. I was a Democrat too, a long-time Democrat, and I will say that I support the person and not the party. And we've been lucky enough in Plymouth. We've had great state delegations that have worked together, that have crossed the aisles, Republican working with Democrats, vice versa, and that's why I've supported both sides. I have a record of that. I've been a delegate as a Democrat, but I'm on record of supporting different candidates, Finney, Matthew Turd, as well as Terry Murray, Michelle Badger. So I've been on both sides. My party now is Plymouth. My party is, that's how I feel. Talking about smart growth, the ratio that I could support, I'd love to have it 20 to 25%. As we know, it's currently 14%. And there are some towns out there that have done a higher percentage. Towns like Waltham and Watertown that have a significant commercial demand with limited area, and that's why they're able to do that. We don't have that. What we have is a growing population that needs services, and we need land that is already zoned for commercial that's being underused in our industrial parks and our shopping centers. We need to encourage the right types of businesses for Plymouth: medical, financial, technical, and trades to use these spaces. We need them to, because they create living wage jobs. We're starting to do this in places like Shops at 5 and the Cottage. We need to help the BID is we need to get some of their departments out of that hospital to make more space for them. And send them like Cottage is doing and Shops at 5 with Aqueous over there. I'd like to see more of that happen in any open space. Eventually, I'd like to see a medical office park. Find some land that we could use, and could be possibly on Holtec, I'm not sure, it might be too far away. But that's something I would like to see in the future. That will help, expanding that tax base will help stabilize the residential taxes. And it will help us with the living wage jobs that people can live and work in this community. So I support 20 to 25%. I don't know if we can make it happen, but I'm gonna try.
Great.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Charlie. Deb, would you like to speak on the wastewater treatment?
Sure. Can do that. And first, I didn't mention my affiliation earlier, so I'm registered unenrolled, but I lean liberal. So let's get on to wastewater. This question actually brought back fond memories for me. I know, wastewater. One of my first jobs out of school was I was a technical writer for an environmental engineering firm in Portland, Maine called E.C. Jordan. And our job was to, we tested the effluent discharge from pulp and paper mills and leather tanneries for the Environmental Protection Agency. They then took our data and set effluent standards for the various industries that we worked in. So that's where I first got my taste of balancing economics with environmental concerns. So I enjoyed thinking about this question. The objectives of the project that we're talking about, diverting the flow from the harbor to the Camelot Park infiltration beds. The objectives make perfect sense to me. I mean, our goal is to enhance the quality of the water in the harbor, reduce the nitrogen that's affecting the shellfish and aquaculture activities and all of that. Perhaps we could, it's also a way to recharge the aquifer. It could potentially be moving people off of the sewer system. All of those are really good. But the environmental and community concerns are very real, and we need to take them very seriously. We need to think about, what will the impact be on the Eel River, and will it make our aquifer more vulnerable to contamination? So we need to really think through those issues. I was at the session here at the barn about a month or so ago when we got an update on the progress of the study that's underway, and from what I understand about that, we should be getting that environmental impact report maybe any day now, like within the next month or so. And that will have some recommendations and solutions that are based in science, driven by science, which is what we need, that I think will also be very helpful as we continue this conversation going forward. I also understand that there's good oversight. We heard a presentation about the oversight that's already in place at Camelot Park. We've been promised additional treatment. There's testing that's underway. I know David Gould's group is involved in the groundwater testing, and anything he's involved in, I have complete confidence in. So that's all good. I am not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination, and I do not claim to have all the answers, but I know how to ask questions. And I think when I think about, what potential ways could we do to improve the safety and the quality of the environmental, protect the Eel River and the aquifer, I just have some questions and some thoughts.
30 seconds.
Okay. Could we gradually increase the effluent flow and do some monitoring along the way, so then that way we can react in real time to any environmental impacts that we're seeing? So that was one thought. Is there a way to provide more vegetation buffers around Camelot Park so that we could filter, like a natural filter system for some of that nitrogen and phosphorus before it reaches the Eel River? And is there any possibility for adding some groundwater monitoring wells, more groundwater monitoring wells between the two areas?
Okay. Scott, would you like to speak on the topic?
Sure. I think this is an important topic. It's a multifaceted topic because it's not just about wastewater. It's not just about the pipe through the harbor. Judging around the room by the age of the room, I guess some of you probably remember Dora, the school bus driver, right?
Sure.
Yeah, she was my aunt, or my great aunt. Anyway, so my branch of the Vecchis is from Brooklyn. My mom was a Sawyer in Plymouth. But, so my dad, when he was a kid, came from Brooklyn to live with my Aunt Dora, and he worked on the fishing boats, right? So when I was a little kid, you know, even though he had already moved on and got a job in the fire department, later the police department, we were still tied to the, you know, to that industry. And I think that's an old school Plymouth industry is our blue economy. And we can't forget that there's still fishing boats, there's still people making a living down there on the harbor. Not to mention across the way with the oyster farms and Duxbury Bay and all that other stuff. So rerouting that out of the harbor is a good thing, right? That's a good thing, because if we had a sewage problem and that all got raw sewage in the harbor, then we'd really have a problem. We'd really harm our blue economy. So, like I said, with that family tie back to the blue economy, I'm very conscious of that. While we're doing that, well, we dug up Water Street. Right? We're about to dig it up for the third time. All right, so that's an issue. Right? We need to fix this. We need to not keep digging up Water Street. We need to not keep affecting all the tourists that's down there. So that's another facet of the wastewater treatment. Then when we finally get back to up here, one of the things we need to be very wary of is increasing that nitrogen discharge in the Eel River. The Eel River is a precious water source, right? It's very historic. It means a lot to us. It actually kind of flows right by here, more or less. And off topic, I still remember the swan that chased all the kayakers around the Eel River. But like I said, so that's it has to be a balance. There's things that we have to do. We have to get rid of that pipe out in the harbor, because that could really cause a catastrophe. So, but when we bring everything back up here to Camelot, we need to be very, very cautious on increasing that nitrogen discharge into the Eel River, because we only have one environment, right? And if we ruin it and we offset that balance in the Eel River, it's very hard to clean it up and get it back. So that's my take on it, is there has to be a balance. I'm not a huge fan of that increased nitrogen discharge, just because that's a precious part of our environment that we need to preserve, but at the same time, we need to get that out of the harbor.
30 seconds. So.
And again, without digging up Water Street. And I'm not an engineer. You know, I'm a lot of things, but I'm definitely not an engineer. But if we've done it once, right? Because we did this back in like the 70s, and it didn't work. And then we tried to do it again one other time. And now we're doing it this time. And if you're from here, you know that everything from Coles Hill out is loosely packed fill. So of course the pipe's settling. Of course a gravity-fed pipe doesn't work. So what do we need to do? We need to look beyond let's just adjusting it.
Okay, Bill.
Over the last 25 years on the Community Preservation Committee, we were very focused on this idea of buying up land around water resources. One of the things that we were able to focus our attention was building a relationship with conservation groups here locally and looking for state and federal funding to buy up this land, to protect those water resources. One of the largest water resource restoration projects that brought in a lot of federal and state money after town meeting committed funds to acquire was the Eel River Headwaters Preserve, Ashley Homes, the Phoenix property upriver. We were trying to protect that 20 years ago. We worked our way down the river looking at different opportunities, but we have to work with not only the state delegation in seeking federal and state funding for land acquisitions, but we also have to tap the resources here locally to help with land preservation around water resources. So there are a number of groups here in Plymouth, and all the work that we did over that period of time was bringing the community together with state and federal agencies, looking for grant money, looking for nonprofits here locally that have the expertise, and having the residents in their institutional knowledge of the town to focus on developing relationships with landowners to make those acquisitions happen. But right now, Eel River, this area is under a lot of stress because we have a plant that is peaking in its capabilities. We're waiting for studies to come in to tell us. I'm not in favor of stressing out that resource any further. This is one of the most important freshwater contributors to our harbor, which is all about our economic viability as a community where people are coming. This is not just about one neighborhood. It is about an industry that we rely on heavily, the tourist industry and people coming to Plymouth. This is not a neighborhood issue. It is a town-wide issue. So I think that what we have to do is work better with the town in its efforts to do the testing and to include the residents in that dialogue and that process of how we process the results of that testing and what we do with it in terms of the effect here on the Eel River. But do believe that we will continue doing these things that we have to do with these agencies and testing and monitoring and looking at the plan and seeing how it's going to be able to handle, if any, further stress. But we're gonna have to look at, aggressively looking at land acquisitions around water resources and wetlands and protecting them. Because we got two things going on. Not only do we have the plant being stressed out, but we also have expected sea level rises that are having an effect on the lower areas where this water is introduced to the harbor. So we have almost bookend crisis that we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Charlie?
Thank you. In December 2024, this issue came before the select board, and some of the folks in this room, I think, were there and presented to us, their concerns. And we listened to the concerns and the urging of creating a citizens action committee, which we did. And that committee now is still working, talking to the experts from the wastewater treatment plant, the management company of that, the engineering firms, the consultants, wastewater master planning permit process, and the Plymouth Department of Energy and Environment, and the Mass DEP. And I'm waiting for those results. They're taking a hard look at the science, and they'll make recommendations to us. And I'm gonna wait till their review comes in and they report to us and give us a report before I can decide which way to vote on this. If the science says the best course is to continue to discharge into the bay, into the harbor, that's how I'll vote. If it says into the beds, that's how I'll vote, if that's what they recommend. But the most important thing is we look at this, as was said here, I think Bill just said it, about looking at the long term, okay? The wastewater master planning process it's gonna be important. And the CAC is only looking at this one issue. The master plan is looking at issues across town to make sure that we're not polluting our waterways like we did in the Cape. At the same time, we have to look at the future and plan for a more town-wide sewer system. That's gonna take a lot of creativity. We're gonna need to look at public-private partnerships with developments like the Pine Hills, like Red Brook, the old power plants, treatment facilities. We may need to build satellite facilities to support the plant at Camelot Park. We may even need to look at intermunicipal agreements with, like the town of Bourne, where they have extra capacity at their plant. Whatever paths we choose, we have to make sure we avoid the problems that Cape Cod is faced right now. So it's very important. Thank you.
Great, thank you. John, would you like to speak?
I don't have a board for this one. So Scott was talking about institutional memory. I grew up in Pembroke, and one of the things that was burned into my brain growing up was that there was a herring run that every spring you went down to, and there were so many fish that you could literally walk across the water. And I moved to Plymouth, Davis Street in the 90s, and back when we read newspapers, there was a story in the Old Colony Memorial. David Gould is removing the first dam on Town Brook. Got out of work one day, I think in '02, I come home, Davis Street, Oak, Summer, Boy Scout Bridge, and there's David Gould, alone in the woods, adjacent to the first dam being removed in Massachusetts on the coast. And that's where I met him for the first time, basically 23 years ago this year, okay? The failure of government, the very structure of government, and I'm not talking about town meeting, I'm talking about all four main forms of government at the municipal level, is that your financial process is 365 days at a time. Nobody runs a business that way. So I went to town meeting 8 years ago, and I got an environmental fund passed, earmarking 50% of the revenues from the renewable resource pilot agreements into an environmental fund under the complete control of David Gould in the Department of Energy and Environment, that he can put together a 5, 10, 20-year plan to invest in water proactively. And that fund has given him roughly 1.3 to 1.4 million over the last 8 years, and he's leveraged that to bring in another 13 to 14 million. So the return on investment has been 10-1 with that fund. Instead of going back to your city council, your town council, or your town meeting annually and say, we want to ask you for your permission for this $75,000 or $233,000 to invest in water. You're giving it to the professionals ahead of time, and you now have some plan. And if you re-elect me, one of the things I want to do in the next 3 years is he needs more money. That fund needs to be increased. So Bill's right. Whenever you get the opportunity, you want to invest in open space, especially around water resources. We need to be more aggressive in that. The state is a complete failure on this issue because the matching grant to the Community Preservation Act is down to 14%. It should be dollar for dollar. They can fix that instantaneously if they wanted to, but it doesn't mesh with their affordable housing. I didn't avoid the question here. Hampton Watkins and other people are very talented. We've appointed, as Charlie said, I think back in December, a group to look at this issue. Okay, it's lose-lose wherever this goes. Well, I'm gonna follow the science, and if I'm back on the board, that is a pretty talented group. I'm gonna look at their analysis of this entire thing. I think they're still 12 to 18 months away, and then we will see where that goes. But I don't want to politicize this one. It's going to be about what the science tells me, because I'm passionate about the Eel River. I'm also passionate about the Atlantic Ocean.
Bill, would you like to speak about open space?
As many of you know, that's one of my passions is open space, and it has been. As a kid who grew up in Plymouth, when I was pedaling my bike through downtown Plymouth in 1970, there were 18,000 people here, and you knew everybody on the street corner. And as time progressed and the Plymouth began to grow rapidly, and I went through the public school system here in Plymouth, and I saw overcrowding, I saw budget cuts, double subventions. This had a profound impact on me growing up as a kid. I saw a generation of young people miss out on an education opportunity that would have made a difference in their future. And I'm just old enough now, celebrating my 40th year from high school, class of '83 at Plymouth Carver High School, to see the effects of that. And it was one of the things that I threw myself into 25 years ago, was to get at town meeting. And when I saw that there was a Community Preservation Act that the governor passed, I wanted to get that passed. I used my experiences at that time in campaign politics to get the CPA adopted in Plymouth. And then I threw myself into making sure that this Community Preservation Act was independent, and that revenue stream was going straight to town meeting, and town meeting was making the decisions. I didn't want to see a political overreach affecting that fund. If you notice, over that 25-year period of time, we kept it down to about $4.5 million. It was one time we went into debt when we were doing the 1820 courthouse. But obviously, we're in a different era with the Community Preservation Act. I think that we have to manage that amount of money that we have committed out into the future. Lower number, so that when other applications and other opportunities come in, that we can make a strategic move on that land. Having a CPA, which has a commitment that far into the future, is tricky. Right now, we have Atlantic Golf Course that's coming at us. It's a Chapter 61. The town is trying to sort out the legalities of what is being presented to us, but eventually we're going to be asked to buy the land. So hopefully during that process, we'll get a number and we'll be able to operate from it. It's important to have people on the Board of Select that understand the way that you find that money is working with all the state and federal organizations in this area and local organizations to start doing your grant writing. We should be more proactive, and we should have, because the 1,500 acres, 1,600 acres is eventually going to be presented to this community. We need to have a strategy when these pieces of land come up, because what's going to happen is the same thing that happened in the year 2000, and that was when we lost the 2,000, 6,000 acres, 4,000 acres that make up the Pine Hills. We had an opportunity to buy that land. So we don't want to be put in a situation where we don't have the opportunity to buy land. So we have to be more proactive about looking into the future of grant opportunities with our state and federal delegation, and start running scenarios that if an opportunity came up, we'd be prepared to make a play for it. And we have to start building up our reserve funds. The town has been doing that in recent years, but we can do a better job putting money aside, not only to help David Gould's office go after grants, but us as a community go after the 1,600 acres or the 1,000 acres. Thank you.
Charlie, would you like to speak?
Thank you. The 1,600 acres, we've gotten very proactive as a board. Since I've been on the board, we put money away every year, so we have money, so we can get a seat at the table with Holtec, when and if they do sell the land. It's not an if, but when they sell the land. We've worked out an agreement, worked hard in that agreement with them. I believe there's 10.5 million, with 3 million in the bank that we'll get, so that brings us up to 13.5 million. And we're gonna put money away every year to get there. So that's very important to us. I would like to see 75% of that land open space. With the 25%, I wanna see along Powerhouse, we have some kind of light industrial commercial development. Eventually, I think on the water on that side, that's not part of the land where the plant is. They may do something with small nuclear, I'm not sure what they're gonna do there. But the rest of the open space, I would like to see it's gotta be like an active open space. I'd like to see hiking trails, biking trails, things that will help our economy with tourism. It's very important. We can't just keep it all forest because we need to pay for this open space. Everybody loves open space, but it costs money. And we need to balance, we gotta stabilize our taxes any way we can. So we need to get some kind of commercial tax out of that land. As far as if you're talking about what's going on down at the golf course, we're in executive session this week talking about, how we can, and I can't talk much about it, but what we can do, we're talking with the state, trying to get them, see if we can get grants, see if we can get somebody to buy it. That's what we're talking about. So we're actively pursuing, trying to save that land. It's important, it'll crucify. Right now, community preservation funds, we don't have it. So this year we had no articles, CPC, because there's no money there. We're in the hole with the CPC, and that's a fact. So, so we got to be really careful how we're spending our money, so we're able to acquire land just like this whole time. And I believe this board, with Mr. Mahoney, myself on that, Mr. Canty's here, we've been proactive in trying to do that. We've been thinking about
30 seconds.
We've been thinking about this Holtec property. I've been on the board for 4 years, and it's something that we're going to be at the table. We're going to be able to control that land by buying it. Thank you.
Deb, would you like to speak on
Sure,
it?
yes.
Yeah, please.
So as a member of the Open Space Committee, I'm really proud of the work that my group has done in acquiring more open space and preserving it. The work we've done on maintaining the trails and just creating some really nice spaces for Plymouth. So I am completely energized by the whole tech master planning process and very excited about the options that were presented to us a couple of weeks ago. And I do believe that this work was an excellent example of engaging and educating the community about the possibilities, and then supplementing that with benchmark data and market trends. So it tells a really nice story and paints a really nice visual of what we could have. As Charlie said, not if, but when we are able to get that land. They're all really super interesting options that they presented to us, those 3 options. And I think that they will help us come up with a really clear set of objectives, because we are going to need to balance the economic value that we get from that land with the environmental value. And I think that there were some options that were presented that will steer us in one way versus another already, and then we just need to drill down a little more into that. I too would like to see the majority of that land preserved as open space. I would like the idea of putting light industrial down along Powerhouse Road, maybe along the waterfront. I saw some options for that. And the kinds of businesses that we put in there, I think, are also very important. It would be wonderful if we could attract some businesses that are going to pay livable wage, good high-paying jobs with good career opportunities for our residents, that will also complement our values as a community. So marine technology, environmental consulting, blue economy businesses, clean energy. I would love to see those kinds of businesses in there and really create that kind of a hub in Southeast Massachusetts for those kinds of industries. I saw some housing options in there, and it seemed from the discussion in the room, it seemed like people were kind of opening up to a little bit of housing there, but I don't really see that as a as the best use of that land. First of all, there's no infrastructure there to support it. So I would much rather see it, the mix of conservation with perhaps some passive recreation and some light industrial in there. But I do think that how we pay for this land and what we gain are going to be key questions as we get closer. We are, as Charlie said, we're going to have to be very creative in our financing
30
there.
seconds.
Yep. We have the money in the nuclear mitigation fund, which is great, but that's not going to go very far with what I believe will be the sale price for this property. CPC funds, if they're available, that would be great. Public and private partnerships, state and federal grants. If there's appetite in the community to issue general purpose bonds, maybe we go that route. Whatever way we go, we're going to end up with debt that we need to think about when we make decisions about how we balance the revenue we gain from the environmental benefits that we get.
John, would you like to speak on it?
So, just an update on the Community Preservation Act or Committee in Plymouth. We just went to town meeting. We reduced our overall promises from 13.9 down to 11.7. That is not debt that is due today. Some of it is due now, some of it is a year out, some of it is 2 years out. So we're at 11.7, our exposure. 12 years ago this month, I got up on town meeting floor and I said the plant is going to close. Not a question of when. We need to be prepared. So we created, town meeting signed off on the Nuclear Plant Stabilization Fund. That was my creation 12 years ago with the support of Mr. Muratori, Mr. Tavares, and 2 others. I'd have to think on that one. Okay? And that's what I bring to the table, the long-term thought process of putting the community in a better financial position, because you were going to be in a place that you wanted to secure the land, part of it or all of it. You might have some security concerns, or you might need to pay for a grant for economic development. Okay? And today that fund has $10.4 million in it. We have an agreement, an 8-year agreement that expires June 30th of 31 that guarantees us first crack at the land, and in the agreement, you have 270 days to perform. So if they called us tomorrow and said, give us $30 million or less for the 1531, you're showing up with cash. Your money and the rest of it is already put together. Because people have been working on this for the last few years. I came back to the board, and in the summer of 23, we started to talk about the agreement we needed to get with Holtec, and we had an executive session, and I told the board, Kevin, were you there? Yes, you were there. I told Kevin and Charlie and the other 2, and Mr. Brindisi, the meeting you have with Holtec is head-to-head. It's not Zoom, it's in person. That meeting happened. That night I talked to Mr. Brindisi from my kitchen at 6 o'clock, and I said, how did it go? And he goes, I can't believe how good that meeting went. And he goes, I'm putting on an executive next week so we can put this to bed. And I said, you're not doing that to me. Because Mr. Canty and Mr. Brindisi were going to be in Japan. Mr. Canty, to his credit with Mr. Brindisi, zoomed into an executive from Tokyo, or wherever you were, at 6 or 7 a.m. from their hotel room. We put that agreement to bed, and it went to October town meeting. And again, I have no problem developing the 200 acres or minus closest to the ocean. It doesn't matter what you put there. If that revenue goes into the general fund, your taxes go through the roof. If it doesn't go in the general fund, your taxes go down immediately and don't go up again. I have a board for this, but I left it over there.
Thank
Okay?
you, John. All right, Scott.
I'm actually disappointed because I was hoping for another big graph. But,
I'll put them up at the end of this.
But anyway, so I've been to all the meetings they've had for the Pilgrim 1600, and I personally think that it's very important that the town acquires this parcel. 300 or so residential units in there would be disastrous for our services, for the infrastructure of the town. But the question is, how are we going to pay for it? And, $10 million is a good start. But realistically, what are they going to look for that? It's going to be $50 or $60 million at least. So the one thing that I will tell you is I am not in favor of a Proposition 2.5 override in the town of Plymouth, right? That would make Plymouth unlivable for you, right? When I lived over on Gunners Exchange, my property taxes, I had a nice big house, 3 acres, was $11,000 to $12,000 a year, right? That's a lot of money. And when you start talking about people that are on fixed incomes, people that are living on Social Security, Proposition 2.5 override would be disastrous for them. So we have to figure out how we're going to pay for it. Where are we going to get $50 or $60 million at least? All right. Again, 10 million is a good start. But I'm going to jump around a little bit. Sometimes I get like that squirrel. If we're going to do any commercial or residential or anything like that down there, right along Powerhouse Road. I've literally walked almost all of those 1,600 acres. There was a way back when the nuclear plant and the police department were talking about building a joint use firing range for firearms training, and I was the lead firearms instructor, so I went out and I walked all around trying to figure out where we could fit this and all that other stuff. So if we were going to do any commercial or affordable housing or anything like that, like along Powerhouse Road where it abuts the rest of the residential stuff in Manomet would be the place to do it. Everything west of State Road needs to be preserved. Needs to be remained as open space. I was a detective for a while when I was a police officer. I don't know how good of a detective, but I was a detective. So I put together pieces when I start seeing them. And I've heard from several people start talking about nuclear, modular reactors, all these other stuff. Personally, I think Holtec's going to wait. They're going to wait the 8 years until the right of first refusal is gone, and then they're going to hold a hammer over us. So the question is as a town, are we going to have an appetite for that when they're holding this carrot over here, the 1,600 acres?
30 seconds.
And they say, hey, we want to put a modular reactor back on the plant property. So again, like I said, when I start hearing people talking about all these little pieces, in my opinion, I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to hold a carrot and they're going to say, okay, carrot or the stick, pick one. So we need to, as a town, figure out if we have an appetite for that. But it is imperative that we keep residential development off of that. I am currently the vice chair of the Plymouth Redevelopment Authority working on affordable housing. Right now we're building a house in Manomet with Habitat for Humanity. Art is hopefully taking my seat that I'm vacating because I'm not running for that. I'm running for select board. So if we can put a little along Powerhouse Road, a little bit of affordable housing in there or something like that, I think that would be great.
Thank you, Scott.
And I know there's town meeting members here, and full disclosure, I'm not a town meeting member. But when town meeting does decide to go in a direction, and this is referring to Hedges Pond Road, where at the town meeting vote, there was a request to put that land into conservation, and then the executive part of this town did not follow through on it. Where do you come down on this in the future?
Why don't we just go down the line, whoever wants?
Yeah, sure.
That's a very good question. And the reason is that for 23 years on the CPC, that's what I did after town. Going to town meeting, getting the recommendation after that was a fraction of the battle. The battle began after town meeting, making sure that the wishes of town meeting were carried out. A new obsession of mine is the Legislative Oversight Committee and coming up with a process that we automatically are taking the results of town meeting, putting them in a spreadsheet, so we see the article, we see the vote, and then we ask the sponsor each there twice a year or 3 times a year and give us an update of where that article is. If you sponsored an article at town meeting, I want a report from you twice a year to be put into this public document to tell us that it's gone to the building committee, or it's gone to procurement, it's going out to bid, it's gone to design and review, or it's going it's been fully executed. That's the thing we want to get to see all the articles and where they are and how they're progressing through time, from the time they voted on a town meeting until the time they're completely executed. A guy called Bill Burke, gentleman here in Plymouth, we all know the Burke Law in the spreadsheet that he created for town meeting, showing the count balances of town meeting. What I'm doing is that for the 21st century, we modernized Bill Burke's explanation of where the money's going and what town meeting is allocating and how it's going, by putting it together with real-time information about articles at town meeting. This is a very painful thing to see articles not be fully executed in the light of day. They fall, sometimes they'll just die on the vine. They'll just sit there and nothing will happen. And so that was one of the things that I was doing on the CPC, was like, wow, this is, to get a CPC article executed after town meeting, there's a lot of work involved. And you had to go through a lot of different departments, a lot of different people, and I learned that process intimately. And I hope if I serve on the select board that I would incorporate that knowledge into this idea of creating a source that we can all go to and see the actions of town meeting and the progress in the account balance.
So this was an article, a CPC article that was passed by town meeting. Okay, and the town manager didn't follow through and didn't. So I myself.
No, it's not. You're talking about 71 hedges? What happened originally 30 years ago, right, Walt?
It was put into conservation.
It was put into conservation. So the question is, and thank you for addressing it. The question is, where does this board fall in its responsibility for following up with town meeting directives? And just, that's the interaction I'm looking for.
So that was an article that was voted on by town meeting. Is that what you're talking about?
I
Yes.
think I can answer it. As a town meeting member, I think I can answer it better than you, Charlie. What happened? Not to, but, because I was there, no, seriously. In 2018, this came up for us to vote on. And I'm still atoning for my vote. And Bill and I have talked about this, and I said, well, Bill, if you'd only told me what was going on. But he was trying to bring community preservation articles to our caucuses, so he couldn't very well start arguing on something else. There's so many battles you can fight. So this article came up. Historically, in '93, the land had been put under conservation, but, as Bill was trying to get to, it had never been put under conservation restrictions. If the conservation restrictions had been put on that land within a year after we bought it, it would still be under conservation. But it wasn't. So then, I don't know, things went on with the Plymouth Foundation and whatever, and the select board for $1 sold it to the Plymouth Foundation, and then they sold it to Eric Pondef for $3 million. And so this is what has resulted. Partly now, I'm on land use and acquisition, and what we do is we go out and look at land. And I think, had we looked at that land, had we been aware of what was happening, we never, most of us in town meeting would never have voted for that to just go.
So Jenny, but
Yeah.
let's just.
So I
Okay,
Jenny,
that's
thank
all.
you. No, Jenny, so I get what you're saying. So my answer is a little bit different now. Is,
Right,
we
it's the present now.
whatever happened 30 years ago, we all know what happened. I hear, since I've been on the board, I hear about trying to make affordable housing, buying historical buildings to make them as affordable housing. And we know that doesn't work anymore. We learn by our mistakes is what I'm saying. And I don't want to point fingers. Let's just, learn from our mistakes.
I'm not.
So that was I'm talking to Walt. So let's learn by our mistakes. Something like that, if an article gets passed, there should be a follow-through. Whether it's the CPC chair, whether it's the town manager, whether it's select board, but somebody has to make sure that those articles, what's supposed to happen, it gets done. So it's simple as that. But I don't, stop pointing fingers, let's just make sure these issues don't happen.
I wasn't pointing
No,
fingers,
no,
I was
no, no,
holding
no,
my
Jenny,
own
that's not, no.
atonement.
No, I'm saying us. I do it all the time, Jenny. And I
I
said,
know.
I don't want, let's just correct the problem. That's what I wanna do, solutions. Thank you.
So, Walter, what I'm hearing in your question is a little bit about what's the board's responsibility,
Accountability.
accountability in all of these things. So I come from the corporate world. I spent most of my career in corporate. So in the corporate world, the buck stops at the executive suite. And I think that that's where it should stop here in the town as well. So as a member of the select board, I would take full accountability and responsibility for some of the issues that we're talking about today. Also coming from the corporate world, I'm really shocked that there's no sort of project management attached to each of the articles. Something that I think that Bill, that's kind of what is embedded in what you were talking about. Someone who champions each of the article and is responsible for taking it forward through the different steps. Whether that's a member of the board, depending on, the importance and magnitude of the article, or it's a department head, but there should be someone in government who is responsible for shepherding that article through to full execution and monitoring afterwards. I think that's a very important step too.
Scott, and then,
Sure. A couple of things to say about that. One is unfortunately, sometimes when we've seen this in past town managers, the town managers think they're the executive when they're an employee. They're an employee of the town. They're an employee of the select board. And as they're the full-time thing, sometimes the select board abdicates towards the town manager. Personally, I never would have voted to take that out of conservation or to move it out of that situation into an industrial area. One of the things that, like I said, I see sometimes the tail wagging the dog where the town manager appears, whether it's just appearance or whatever, appears to be directing the select board and what to do. One of the things I bring to the table, I'm a retired gunnery sergeant of Marines. So if I need to come out and deploy a knife hand and start giving stern and harsh direction, every now and again, I've been accused of hurting feelings in the past. Sometimes it's appropriate, right? If we need to say, hey, that's not your place, that's not your role, you're not running the show, right? One of the things that we usually hold over our town manager's head is their contract. Supposed to come up every 3 years for renewal. For some reason, I don't know the reason, we decided to extend this current town manager's contract well in advance of its expiration. But that's usually the pull cord for a town manager, right? Is, hey, your contract's coming up, you better listen, you better do what we're told. Personally, I think the board needs to rein in Mr. Bernese a little bit. That's just my personal opinion. And I think that the board needs to take more decisive leadership. And that's what I'm bringing to the table here. Again, I think that was in conservation. Like I said, we didn't pass the deed to defer to Ginny. One of the things I learned in my life, do what Ginny says. My life's a lot easier when I do what Ginny says. But like I said, so there was an issue that needed to be fixed. When me and Bill were on the charter commission, all right, the elected charter commission, one of the things that we repeatedly talked about was a mechanism to follow town meeting articles and ensure that how the money was spent, it was spent appropriately, and that town meeting articles were followed through. I still believe that's very much needed. Like I said, unfortunately, the charter that we came up with didn't pass. There was a lot of things in it that I have my own opinions on that. I wasn't in the majority of it, but I agreed to support the group effort that came out of it. But I think that some of the things that we need to look back to is exactly that. Why aren't these things being followed through with? Why aren't these articles more directly supervised and carried out?
Let's, John, you wanted to say something, then Rich,
Scott, I think I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. So,
you want me to get the card?
So on this one, Mr. Brindisi has nothing to do with this one, okay? Walter, you're correct. Whatever went down in '93, there can't be any lag time. If a commitment is made to put land into conservation, that has to be done post haste. And I can't explain it. It has happened on a couple of other occasions. If you look at the Community Preservation Committee, it is a volunteer board. back in 17, when Brindisi was the assistant town manager, that committee had a backlog of 26 CRs that hadn't been filed. And the Commonwealth came down and said, you gotta rectify this situation or we're pulling your funding, okay? So one of the things that we've done in the last couple of years is we've given the volunteer committee a $25,000 to $30,000 investment to help with administrative staff. So that post-town meeting, that football, if you will, once it goes through town meeting and Mr. Withington and Mr. Cirque and Davis approve it, that goes on to that individual to help to move forward with the closing. Let's get the CR passed. And then, is there any dangerous infrastructure left on the site? Let's mitigate it and get it removed. So we've invested in that, we've improved that process. And on 71 Hedges Pond Road, there was also a commitment to take 134 acres adjacent to that and put that into conservation in exchange for the 33 coming out. So any day now or any week, that conservation on the 134 is supposed to be complete. And as soon as that's done, we'll make sure that that's public.
I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
Since the CPA has been brought up in a question that wasn't really geared towards that. When, that was the thing that, you can have a seat, I was just standing. My buddy. So no, it's a different interpretation, and that was for many years, the Community Preservation Act was able to work with very effective town managers, Mark Sylvia, even Melissa and others that we had over the years, very effectively moving articles through the process. But we had to move them through Copeland Page. That was the town council that we had. So we had when we got an article passed at town meeting, it was time to put the restriction on it. We were going through our attorney that we had to battle the town to get. We had our own administrative funds. We wanted to get an attorney to get these CRs done because they weren't happening quick enough through K&P. K&P was charging us lots of money. We were going to our representatives on the CPC to talk to the town manager to expedite this problem over a 10-year period of time. It was always like pulling teeth getting the CR done. That's why I'm so focused on this legislative oversight to make sure there's a process of getting things fully executed. Because we ran into a big problem with Copeland Page. We were able to get our own town council, and we had the backlog. Wasn't that we weren't doing anything. Wildlands Trust was doing a huge task of putting together the CRs and presenting them to Copeland Page, but it was like sending something to a black hole. And we would go to the town manager and like, why are we not hearing from K&P on our CRs? Eventually, it caught up to the town where the town said, was confronted with the state saying, hey, you're not going to be eligible for grants if you don't get updated on your CRs. And then that's when things started to move much smoother. We had the total attention of the town manager. The Wildlands Trust and all their work was going to fruition, and we got the CRs done. But it's an experience I went through, and as a result of that, I don't ever want to see anything like that happen together. Nothing should stop the execution of an article getting completed by any town manager or any department or any law firm. We need to move quickly. So I just wanted to make that clear, and that's that.
Rich, I had a question of Maury with respect to your question.
I'm not running for office, Richard.
In 2017, when the land was in the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, town meeting voted to change the zoning in order to enable the land to be under the jurisdiction of the select board and then to be zoned for commercial development. What would you have had the town do at that point? Because when land is zoned for commercial or light industrial development, it's usually would-be purchasers that come forward and seek to use the land for the new purposes for which it was zoned. So what would you have had the town do after it had set the table and we're just waiting for people to come up and take a seat and have a bite to eat?
Town meeting got goofed again.
My purpose in the question is to get everybody that's running for office to find out what their relationship is and how they view the management style in relating to town meeting. Is that particular event down there just lends itself, because it was a disconnect between town meeting and the executive session. The executive board being the selectmen and town manager. And that's what I was trying to get
What
at.
was the disconnect?
It never got done.
What never got done?
Conservation
The
restriction.
conservation.
But the fact that the land had been in the care and custody of the Conservation Commission until town meeting changed that and enabled that land to be zoned commercial.
Right.
So the fact that there hadn't been a conservation restriction placed on the land before the rezoning, yeah, it might have made the state very angry because we weren't following up on our conservation zoning. But the fact is that the town meeting voted to rezone that land. So I don't think that the absence of a conservation, yeah.
You're entirely right
Yeah.
about all that. My point was only to hear everybody's explanation
Yeah.
as to the relationship between the board of selectmen,
Yeah.
town manager, and town meeting member, which you are a member of.
Yeah. The only
And
thing,
how we do follow up in the future.
yeah, the only further comment I would make is that the real problem with that development is the sand removal, of course, and whether the sand and gravel removal was incidental to what's being built, or whether what's being built is incidental to the sand removal.
You have to go back further, and I've lived down there a little while.
Yeah,
Is the amount of conservation land in that area, in the Cedarville area, was minimal.
Yeah.
And back at that time period, it was sold to the town meeting as, hey, you do not have conservation land down in this end of town.
Yeah.
Could we please have this put into conservation?
yeah,
That was the reasoning back then, Richard.
agreed.
Okay.
But the key decision was made in 2017 to
That's
take it
because there
out.
were no
let's-
conservation
let's-
restrictions put on in time.
yeah.
If they'd been put on in a timely method, that never would have happened. And now in town meeting,
So we've got.
That's
we've got a
what I'm
bunch
trying
of
to get across.
candidates up here. Let's see if we can get some
never would have
questions
happened.
directed at them. Tom,
Never
what you
mind
have?
what happened.
So we done?
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah, so, we had our consultants look at the 1,600 acres,
Get it out of it.
and their first poster was the most fascinating poster. It showed,
I can't hear.
really,
Speak up, Tom.
okay, I'm trying to speak up. So, the first poster at the follow-up session of the 1,600 acre consultants showed that 70% of people who work in the town of Plymouth live outside the town of Plymouth, and 80% of the people who live in Plymouth work outside Plymouth. So that just seems like an economic problem to me. So the people who work here can't afford to live here, and if they could, they would bring all of their incidental business to Plymouth, because they live here. And if housing were more affordable, or if industry moved in, there was higher paying industry, then those 80% of people who are leaving the town to go to Boston to have a higher paying job would be working in Plymouth, and also increase our economic situation here in Plymouth. I just thought that was the most interesting poster of all of the rest of it. And to me, it's all about housing. That really, I've lived through all my life too. I watched that power plant get built. My best friend used to go with his hard hat to Bradford's Liquor because he pretended power plant was a team. So, but anyway, so housing, I just think it's the foundational problem here. And so one of you guys said that we can't afford to build new housing. We can't afford not to build new housing. So what do you think about that one poster? How does that fit into your planning ideas?
Who wants to shoot first?
I have to leave. Can I go first?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm glad I'm here. It's a very knowledgeable crew. and active group, so I hate to leave, I have an event that I have to get to. Your answer to that is, we need affordable housing, but we need higher paying jobs. We need both. That's a simple answer for me. We need to entice, and the medical field is what I really want to concentrate on, because we have a hospital right here in Chilton that is outgrown. We outgrew that probably 15, 20 years ago. And the community's getting bigger, not just Plymouth, but all around the South Shore that depend on the old Jordan Hospital. So I'd like to see medical office, a park if we could, or at least fill all the existing space like they're doing, Atrius is doing it, and they're doing it over in Cottage, bringing high-paying medical jobs to Plymouth so people could afford to live here. Also, at the same time, affordable housing, so the people that are living there now with lower-paying jobs could I mean, not to get too general like that, but that's really what I would like to see. And so how we get it done, I don't have the complete answer on that, but that's what I think we have to concentrate on. So it's a great question, Tom.
Someone else? John, Scott.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Can I use one of your crafts?
Yes.
Anyway, so you're right. It has to be. It can't just be no more housing, right? Because my first house on Gunner's Exchange, which I sold for $329, just went for like $650, and that wasn't even that long. But so it has to be affordable. We can't control the real estate market, but what we need to do is bring in good jobs to the town of Plymouth. I was very fortunate to not only live in the town of Plymouth, but to work in the town of Plymouth, spent my money in the town of Plymouth. And even when we look back to the nuclear plant, we can't vilify the nuclear plant. Every outage, how many workers did they bring into the town of Plymouth? Every hotel down in Manomet off-season was full of them. They were spending their money down there, whether it was at Monte Cristo's or wherever, it doesn't matter. They were pumping money into the economy. And that's one of the things that we do have to look at is how do we attract good paying, preferably union work, right? Union workers get paid a certain wage, they come into the town, they spend their money in the town, they live in the town, and the money circulates around. And that's one of the things, you can't, because if we just build 300, 350 residential homes on the Pilgrim 1600, right, what are you gonna burden? Police, fire, DPW, the hospital, all these other things. You can't just build new housing without bringing new jobs into the town too. But bringing, like I said, affordable housing, we can talk about it all the time. It's a buzzword, all right? Like I said, we on the redevelopment authority are actually doing something about it, building a house for a needy family. I'm hoping that Art will continue that and build more houses around it for people can afford, right? But there's a balance that we have to. We have to be more friendly to business, bring in business, but good paying jobs, so that people can afford to live here.
John, you wanted to say something, and then why don't we finish up, Deb, you and then we'll finish it, and then we can break up.
Nobody has taken a step back and actually defined what is affordable housing.
Right.
Because what the town has done for the last 40 to 50 years is unaffordable. And there are a multitude of variables that go into affordable housing in which, he just, what'd you say, buzzword? It's like Pavlov's dog. Developer gets up in front of a board and says, I'm going to make affordable housing, and the people on the respective boards start salivating. And it hasn't happened. I think what the Community Preservation Committee did, I think 12 to 24 months ago, this thing down at Red Brook, in theory, with the AMI being pushed, the average medium income being pushed down to 60, and 40% of what is deemed affordable, might be one of the true investments that we've quote unquote ever made into affordable housing. And the other thing I want to show you, and this is coming from the Economic Development Director, Camelot Park in the North Plymouth Industrial Park. It's 550 acres. That's almost a square mile. So the North Plymouth Industrial Park was founded in '62. At 63 years. That's a square mile. 181 businesses. 6,500 jobs, okay? The tax revenue from that square mile is only $3.9 million a year. The contribution from that power plant in '72 at 3% in $25 is around $30 million. It's the worst thing that ever happened to this town. And I feel for him, and I feel for him and whoever else in this community who had a compromised public education because they had to go to double sessions at Plymouth Carver High School.
Right. Deb, and then Bill, and then we'll just do.
So I loved that chart too. What that data said to me was, my God, this town needs an economic development plan. I mean, we need to really start planning now for, for what types of businesses we want to bring into town, where we're going to put truly affordable housing once we're out from underneath the burden of the 40B developers. I mean, we're sort of at their mercy. Where they want to put developments and what they want to, how we define affordable based on the state definitions. So once we're out of that and we're almost there, we're getting closer and closer and closer, we'll be able to define our own version of affordable housing and move forward from there. But we don't have to wait for that to happen. We can start planning for that now. We can start identifying areas where it makes sense and start defining what is truly affordable housing based on our own demographics. So that's the housing piece of economic development. The business piece, we need to attract businesses that will provide good, stable, blue and white collar jobs. Those are the kinds of people that we're losing to the Boston jobs and wherever they're headed for livable wages. And those are kind of the industries that we've been talking about tonight: the blue economy, marine technology, research organizations. Those sorts of businesses should be what we're focusing on for our community. Just given our location in our communities, and the values that we have, I think that those are the kinds of businesses that we should be looking at and trying to attract now, and identifying the best areas to put them. So I think there's a lot of work that we could be doing ahead of time instead of just keep saying, well, we can't do that because, we can't do that until. We can start doing that now.
I always say this about Plymouth. Plymouth is like, imagine Boston is the sun. Plymouth is, and you got Mercury, and you got Venus, and then you got Earth. Plymouth is like Earth. We're in the Goldilocks zone, spinning around Boston. We're not too far, we're not too close. And that's when, before the plant came online, and the plant's been offline, we're one of the fastest growing towns in New England. It's consistent. We grew up in a town where there was 18,000, now there's close to 70,000. The reality is really focused on what type of zoning you have. When you think of zoning, think of it as a portfolio that you have in investments. And your portfolio is going to bring in a revenue to you to live off of adequately. So if you have too much of some type of zoning, that can be burdensome to you. We have to accommodate the housing condition. On the CPC, we built hundreds and hundreds of units of affordable housing. And in that capacity, we were going after different demographics. Because when it comes to building affordable housing, there are lots of different people: first-time buyers, people that are moving up, people are moving down, people are retiring. You have to make these accommodations. But you have to look at your zoning. We have to rethink zoning to allow first-time buyers. We might have to start looking at areas that we've already zoned one way that's not productive, and maybe upzone it to something that's more productive, especially when it comes to housing in commercial and a mixed-use capacity, making people able to live and work where they should be. I think Long Pond Road is a missed opportunity. In 1998, I sat there at town meeting, and Roberta Grimes grabbed the podium and said we had to rezone this highway commercial. And that's when we went from light industrial, kind of like Camelot Park and the industrial park in North Plymouth, where you had small businesses locally owned by people, paying livable wages, giving benefits to those people. When you start to do the cost analysis of Camelot Park, every dollar that's coming out of Camelot Park, we bring far less services to that location. We're winning at Camelot Park. We're losing at Long Pond Road, because every study is showing that it's one of the least effective zoning. Next to residential, having a big box store and a strip mall and a plaza in your town is not paying the way. That's why these people have to travel. The 80% have to come into Plymouth to work on the strip malls.
What do you refer to as Long Pond Road?
Long Pond Road, Home Depot, that area there in 1998 was rezoned from light industrial. That was a huge Camelot Park, really. and we cut it down to a quarter of its size, and we rezoned this whole area highway commercial, which we brought in. Then boom, starting in 1998, that didn't exist out there, and then boom, there it was. Very quickly, we had this area. Now to get people to work in those plazas, we have to go outside of Plymouth to find the people to work there. And they're not paying better jobs to us. Our property taxes go up because, again, the money that Viking Corporation pays us for the Home Depot Plaza, we have to come up with, that's not a very productive use of our zoning land. So we have to rethink our zoning when it comes to commercial and residential. And that's one of the things I learned on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that's what really motivated me 25 years ago to get involved in conservation and preservation. It was about trying to balance this scenario because we were being burdened as residents with higher property taxes, a loss of quality of life, and as our town grows like this, in intersection after intersection after intersection, traffic and they fail, our property taxes go down. I hear this because I'm in real estate and I hear people say why they're selling their home and moving out of Plymouth, or can they afford to live in Plymouth? The transportation cost alone to get to your job from Plymouth and the time that's allotted becomes very problematic. So these are all things that are affecting your property taxes in the future of Plymouth. That's why I think we have to really focus on this master planning process. And when the master planning process is done, we need to have a recommendation addendum to that. I want to see 10 of the possible article changes that we could make at town meeting to make this master plan a reality. So if you just do a master plan and you don't have an action plan to implement it, it's like a tree falling in the woods. So when we do our master plan this time, we need to attach an addendum to it, the recommended zoning changes to make that plan a reality.
Thank you, Bill. All right, so we're at time. Thank you all for coming, to all the candidates. Food and stuff that she doesn't want to bring home, so.
Dennis, sorry. Maybe remember me again. Colony Club. I do, yes. How are you? Good. See you. Good to see you too. Sorry, I'm on your way.
This is so complicated.
Very well.
My husband left, I thought I was